Additional Allocation Bill number 23 of 2024. Now that comes as a boost when what some say, yeah, some just basic additional funds by the national government, even as county chiefs or county CEOs or governors, if you'd love to call them that, continue to lament over the current proposed 391 billion disbursement of funds set to be disbursed in the financial year 2024-2025, as they insist on 450 billion. Now, according to governors, they want around 433 billion and an additional 10 billion from the road levy, which they say will, of course, help in ensuring that devolution fully works. Now, farmers are on the net by KERE, as you know, of course, I said to, rescind its decision to ensure that they can now, or farmers can now, pay taxes via e-teams in, a move that is opposed, or is, different from the earlier thought that it was a bit difficult to, get farmers into the net of paying taxes in what was termed as hard areas to tax. Now, we'll be looking into that, and of course, various issues regarding the tussles between the national government and county governments in regards to funds allocations, the priority of county governments when it comes to funds, because a report by the Control of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, in recent weeks has shown that very many counties, in fact, to be specific, 19 counties have used less than 10% of their funds on development. Leaves a lot to ponder on, because less than 10% on development means a lot of the funds disbursed to county governments do end up in paying of salaries and allowances. Now, some county governments, including the county government of Baringo, are on this spot because MCS, members of county assembly, do receive up to 152,000 monthly allowances. 152 monthly allowances. That's a huge amount of money. Now, questions continue to linger as to what should county governments prioritize. There's the issue of pending bills as well. And 2 weeks ago, the Council of Governors, led by their chairperson Kirinyaga Governor Anne Mumbi Waiguru, while appearing before the Senate committee, led by former Mandera Governor Ali Roba, did say that county governments are in dire need of these funds, because if the government will not give them the 450 billion that they want, then services could be paralyzed, or operations could be paralyzed in the county governments. We'll be talking about that in depth, issue of funds and allocation, and what should counties prioritize, whether counties should be held liable, because several governors have also been accused of, embezzling public funds. There's the issue of, bursaries being embezzled by county governments, again in a report by Control of Budget Margaret Nyakango, who says that those needy students, orphans, and all those who depend on bursaries from county governments might not benefit, as the money might end up in the pockets of corrupt individuals. That again is one thing that someone would say is a bone of contention in regards to the funds that governors want. Governors want more money, but question is, can they account for the money that they are given? Now, before we have that particular conversation, just like I said, a day after President William RUTO signed the National County Government's Additional Allocation Bills 2024 into law, we'll be looking at these stories making headlines in our newspaper review this particular morning. Remember, you can watch this particular show live on our Facebook and YouTube pages at Lookuptv. At this particular moment in time, you just take a short breather, then we'll continue with this particular show, and more specifically, the newspaper review. Didn't go away. Well, thank you very much for staying with us. It is time for the newspaper review here on the Morning Drift. And I beg we start with the Daily Nation. And the big story, like I alluded to, says KRA tax shocker for farmers and businesses. That is a story on page 7. And they say the Kenya Revenue Authority has rescinded its decision to exempt farmers as well as small businesses with an annual turnover of less than 5 million shillings from the requirement to produce electronic invoices for their sales as the government moves to seal leakages and boost collection from hard-to-tax areas. That is a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation this particular Monday, in a move that will not probably go well with farmers. Now they say the adoption of the technology, including the usage of the e-teams, is one of the ways President William Ruto's administration wants to seal leakages. Initially, the e-teams was designed in such a way that taxpayers had to have the internet to, of course, generate electronic tax invoices from their smartphones. However, KRA has changed this by enabling every Kenyan to access e-teams through e-citizen platform, and of course the USSD code *222#. And of course, KRA noted that this is part of efforts aimed at supporting and facilitating taxpayers to comply with the requirements of the law. Now, that is, of course, an issue that will not augur well with most farmers here in the country, but it is a directive given by the Kenya Revenue Authority. And of course, this is in a bid by the Kenya Kwanza administration to seal what they term as leakages and, loopholes and boost collections from what they previously termed as hard to tax areas. If you want to get more details on that story, that is a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation. The other big story on the Daily Nation is a story that has been making headlines since last week, and they say what doctors want will not settle for less despite the threats on our lives. And they say the threats on our lives, of course, this follows the shooting of the Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, that is Daji Bimji, last week, and is still recuperating at the Nairobi hospital. Yesterday, the medics did, of course, hold demonstrations to protest against the shooting of their SG, and they gave a 1-week notice, 7-day notice, failure to which, if the government will not address their concerns, then they will go back to the streets. Now that means that health services might be paralyzed across the country. They say 1,210 medical interns who are yet to be posted, despite internship policy stating that they should be posted 30 days after they graduate. 1,210 have not been posted yet. We saw hundreds demonstrating yesterday and last week before the ministry, Ministry of Health offices here in the capital, Nairobi. And some of the proposals that the medics want addressed is the annual recruitment of doctors, as is done by the disciplined forces, purchasing of hospital equipment instead of leasing, encouraging local manufacturing of health products and technologies, amending law to consider human resource for health as development, and of course putting health facilities in levels 1, 2 and 3 and counties, while levels 4, 5 and 6 under the national government. That is a story on page 9 of this particular newspaper this morning. And just at a glance, they say 90% of health functions have been devolved, but the ministry has retained billions of shillings. This is according to the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union. You can get details on this particular story. As you know, like I said, their SG continues to recuperate in hospital. This, of course, the alleged shooting of the SG has attracted condemnation from various stakeholders, most recently the Law Society of Kenya, who yesterday, of course, hit out at the security officers, noting that the right to picket, peaceful picketing, is enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution, and that is what the doctors were doing. Of course, this is not the first time that the security forces have been on the headlines in regards to how they deal with protesters here in the country who are peacefully picketing. That is a story that you can get on page 9 of the Daily Nation this particular morning. On the top left of the Daily Nation, they say Kenya launches Raila campaign for top AU post as Mudavadi rules African envoys in the capital. That is a story on page 5. Yesterday, of course, Musalia Mudavadi met various diplomats and, of course, urged those from the African continent to support Raila Odinga's bid to succeed Musa Faki Mahamat. Remember, as well, there's a proposal before the union that if at all a country has had person from that particular country being the chairperson of the African Union Commission, or even the deputy chairperson of that particular commission, then that country will not be eligible to front anyone again. Well, that has not been passed yet. That is the only issue that could be an hindrance in the bid by, or the quest by Raila Odinga to become the next African Union Commission chairperson, because if that particular proposal is adopted or passed by the union, then it means Raila Odinga will not vie for that particular seat. That is a story on page 5. Just before I wrap up stories on the Daily Nation, there's a story on page 4, and they say showdown looms as senators debate on Monda impeachment. Remember, Kisii Deputy Governor Robert Monda was impeached last week by the members of County Assembly after 53 out of 70 members of County Assembly voted to oust him out of office. There have been differences between Robert Monda and his superior, who is the governor of Kisii, Simba Arati, and his fate now lies in the hands of senators as they are set to debate on the impeachment. Now, on that note, just briefly, before we jump to the Standard, the story I was alluding to in my introduction is on the back page of the Daily Nation. They say county bursaries at risk of being embezzled, says Margaret Nyakango. They say in various counties, financial reports for the county bursary funds, county executive car loans and mortgage schemes, education and scholarship funds were not submitted for audit. Furthermore, no letters of acknowledgement or receipts from the institutions hosting the benefiting students were presented to confirm that bursaries had been received by the schools. That, of course, brings up the question of accountability by county governments. On that note, we jump straight to the Standard this morning, and they say court blow for RUTO Gachagua over tribalism. Judge declares the appointment of 1,402 revenue assistants unconstitutional for being skewed in favor of Kikuyu and Kalenjin communities. KRA Chairman Anthony Mwaura's home constituency, KRA Chairperson Anthony Mwaura's home constituencies got the lion's share of the slots. That is a story on page 10. Remember, those revenue assistants were appointed last year, and a red flag has been raised regarding the appointment and the number of those revenue assistants in regards to whether they're spread across all if you want to say tribes, if you call them, across the country, because they say of the 1,402, majority come from the Kalenjin and Kikuyu communities, and they say it has a matter that Justice William Isoka's judgment that Kiharu constituency got 40 persons employed by KRA, while Thika constituency got 50. That is a combined 90 in just 2 constituencies in Kiambu County, which the chairperson Anthony Mwaura comes from. Now, again, there's a story regarding the notice by doctors who say they will down their tools next week. They say doctors to down tools in the next 7 days. That is, of course, if their issues or their concerns will not be addressed. Again, same story. They say AU job, Mount Kenya rumbles with talks of new alliances. That is a story on page 2. Just before we look further into that particular story, there's been the debate on Raila's succession, because if indeed Raila Odinga succeeds in his bid to become the next African Union Commission chairperson, then that means he will be out of the presidential race in 2027. That leaves the opposition coalition in a limbo. And just before we jump straight to the news this particular morning, they say Raila's AU ambition jolts political parties set to birth new alliances. Intrigues of the Raila-Uhuru handshake are being replicated in the Ruto-Raila bromance. There have been talks of a new coalition within not only the Mount Kenya region, but as well the entire opposition, in a bid to ensure that they have a formidable side that they say can counter President William Ruto come 2027. Now, finally, on the back page, they say Bayern most at risk in the Champions League. Remember, the Champions League resumes tonight as Bayern Munich take on Lazio at home. Remember, Bayern Munich do trail Lazio by 1-0. Real Madrid take on RB Leipzig. Leipzig as well will travel to Madrid, trail by a solitary goal. Sociedad will host Paris Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain did win 2-0 in the first leg. And of course, Manchester City will play host to FC Copenhagen. Copenhagen trail 3-1 in that particular tie. On that note, we wrap up the newspaper review. We take a short breather. We'll be back with the news highlights this morning. Well, we begin our bulletin now this morning, and doctors have issued a 7-day strike notice beginning next week on Monday. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union on Monday staged a peaceful demonstration in Nairobi, protesting, among other things, the shooting of their Secretary General Daji Atela by police during a similar demonstration in Nairobi last week.
The streets of Nairobi were filled with medics carrying placards. Cries of justice renting the air as they demand for their rights, marching to the Ministry of Health headquarters at Harper Hill. The disgruntled medics made the whistles their greatest communication tool. This coming barely a week after KMPDU held protests where they wanted issues raised by the union addressed. Today, once again, the doctors took to the streets, issuing a 7-day notice, saying if their issues are not addressed, then they will down their tools beginning on Sunday, March 9th.
Today is that much. But as a union, as KMPDU, we are going to give a strike notice starting today, a 7-day strike notice that will culminate in shutdown from Sunday midnight.
There's also been a push and pull between the unions and the government on the posting of interns, whom the union claims are wasting away and languishing at home. And according to KMPDU, 1,215 medical interns are waiting posting, with some having waited for either 6 months or 1 year.
We have a group of healthcare workers who are posted as UHC staff. They have been on contract, and the contracts keep on changing, the salaries keep on dropping. We don't know where the money keeps on going. They are in Green Park. They are going to join us as comrades in the march to Afya House to call out the CS and her team.
Further, the doctors are now demanding that the government issue a comprehensive medical coverage to them, which has reportedly been scrapped in the newly proposed Social Healthcare Insurance Fund shift, payment on postgraduate fees, studies leaves and pension being among the issues raised.
Because sadly lately you have seen that the CS has abdicated her duties.
Law Society of Kenya came to the medics' defense, condemning the willful disregard of the law by the government agencies, violating of rights to protest and vote, to stand in solidarity with KMPDU in taking all necessary action to ensure justice is served for Dr. Daji Atela.
Kenyans are exercising their rights, including the right to peacefully protest. that the police appear to be using excessive force. This can only lead us to one conclusion, that there is an informal government policy to restrict the rights of Kenyans.
Mevin Getembe, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
The Law Society of Kenya has said it will initiate contempt of court proceedings against the Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner General over alleged illegal deduction of the housing levy. Addressing the press on Monday, LSK President-elect Faith Odhiambo said there was no legal basis for the taxman, including other state agencies, to deduct the funds from employees. KEITANY files the following story.
Just a few days after the Attorney General Justin Muturi cautioned against making any collections from the affordable housing levy that was declared illegal by the Court of Appeal, the Law Society of Kenya, led by the outgoing President Eric Thury, now say they will commence contempt of court proceedings against the government for illegally collecting housing levy despite the court orders. Thury also condemned the Attorney General for the advisory he released, claiming it was unnecessary.
We think that irrespective of the advice that the Attorney General has given, it is every person has a right to comply with court decisions. KRA is part of the parties that were in court, both in the High Court and in the Court of Appeal. And we know that they have competent lawyers within their organization that would have advised on the effect of the Court of Appeal failing to give an order to stay the implementation of the High Court decision.
Thury further called on to the Kenya Revenue Authority and other accounting offices to know that currently there is no law authorizing the implementation of the housing levy. Thury further urged the government to desist from the willful disobedience of court order and disregard of provisions of the Constitution and the law for the sake of Kenyans.
This can only lead us to one conclusion, that there is an informal government policy to restrict the rights of Kenyans. There is a government policy not to comply with court orders that the government does not agree with. And we are concerned that if we continue in this manner, then the administration of law going to courts will lose meaning, and it will get to a point where ordinary members of the public will decide to take law into their own hands.
LSK has called on to Kenyans to arm them with evidence of illegal deductions, which will come in handy when the petition is filed in court.
It has come to our attention that the Kenya Revenue Authority and other government agencies have, despite the declaration of Section 84 as being unconstitutional, have continued to deduct and remit to the Kenya Revenue Authority the housing levy. There is no legal basis to deduct the housing levy, and this action amounts to contempt of court and arbitrary imposition of tax.
KEITANY, Lookuptv.
Now, the new regulations in the energy sector are set to improve the quality of the electricity market, which will in turn ensure an efficient and reliable supply of electricity. This is according to EPRA Director General Daniel Kipto, who was speaking during the Stakeholders Engagement Forum on the draft energy regulations of 2024. Kipto expressed confidence that the regulations will promote fair pricing by reviewing and approving any services to be charged by licensees.
But for us as the regulator is to have as much optionality to the consumers as possible, so that then, as we say, akin to the telecom space, where you could be able to have multiple service providers provide you the electricity, and you as a consumer having the optionality to move from one service provider to the next service provider in a seamless manner. We'll need to have a conversation so that then we don't have a duplication of investments, as it were, so that then you have competition at the retail level without having necessarily to restrict entry by geographically restricting the number of actors who come in and how they then apply for licenses from us and how do they compete for consumers. Today in the tariff, as you may be aware, the tariff that we did approve in March of last year, the tariff we only provide for operation and maintenance, O&M costs, in the tariff today. The capex of the building of the transmission lines is 100% borne by the government of Kenya. So when you go now into this space and you have private sector playing in transmission, in the new infrastructure that will be there, we'll have to provide for a wheeling tariff that covers both the operation and maintenance and the capex as well. But for existing lines which have been built by government funding, we'll continue to only provide for the O&M. So it is already in the structure of the tariff, the tariff process as well. So it is not something new. The wheeling tariff will just allow us to compensate those private sector players who will come into transmission, but continue to compensate KETRACO on the basis of the operation and maintenance, because the government has already funded those lines. Well, today Kenya Power has the majority of the customers, but the monopoly ended with the passage of the Energy Act 2019 that talked to the principle of open access. But however, we had not operationalized that. And today we are here to discuss draft regulations that will operationalize the principle of open access. So that then, because as I said earlier on, the line business is a natural monopoly. If you earn a license by us as ZEPRA, you will not go and construct your own lines. You will use the existing highway, if I can call it that. So these regulations will operationalize that principle that is there in the law. And that will then give optionality to customers to be able then to wheel power from point A to point B, from the generation center to the load center, and allow them to consume that power.
Too much as a security now, the government will deploy an additional 250 National Police Reserve officers to Laikipia County to enhance security within the county. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua held a high-level meeting of leaders and security chiefs in Laikipia to strategize on ending the rampant insecurity in the county. As Martin Mashari now reports, Gachagua also launched the Makutano Huduma Center in Laikipia County, calling on Kenyans to utilize these services.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua inaugurated the Makutano Huduma Center in Laikipia County today, marking a significant milestone in providing essential services to the local community. Speaking at the event, the Makutano Huduma Center is poised to cater to the needs of over 500,000 residents in Laikipia and neighboring regions, offering a wide array of government services under one roof. This initiative aims to streamline access to vital services, promoting efficiency and convenience for citizens.
We are devolving a people-centered service to the doorstep. We are reaching over 60,000 customers per day through the Huduma centers in 33 counties across the country. Opening of this facility in Laikipia County increases our reach to the people. The Makutano facility is strategic. It will serve over 500,000 residents of Laikipia and the bordering counties whose Huduma centers are far away. It will complement and ease the demand for service at the other facility in Nyanyuki town.
On Sunday, Gachagua convened a high-level meeting of leaders and security chiefs in Laikipia County to devise strategies aimed at curbing the rampant insecurity plaguing the region. The meeting saw the participation of political figures, national government administration officers, security personnel, county executive members, religious leaders, the business community, members of county assembly, and opinion leaders.
Kwa miaka mingi, the issues of insecurity coming from the neighboring counties of Baringo and Samburu. People living in fear. Hundreds of people have been killed. The new county commissioner and your team, please put your heads together. Commissioner, tafadhali muketi na watu wako. Please, good people, the government has brought you here for a job. And the job is simple: secure our people.
Expressing grave concerns over the loss of lives and property due to insecurity, Deputy President Gachagua emphasized that security is non-negotiable and called for zero tolerance towards laxity in addressing the issue. He, however, urged security officers led by the new county commissioner Onesmus Kiatha collaborate closely with the community to ensure the safety and well-being of all residents.
We'll give you all the support that you need. County commissioner, please lead from the front and continuously engage these leaders. And I'm sure you will succeed and will give you the support.
Martin Masharia, Lookuptv.
Now, staying on matters security, specialized security forces have been deployed to boost the ongoing Operation Maliza Uhalifu in the 6 North Rift Valley counties ravaged by incidents of bandit and livestock rustling. Addressing frontline security officers at Sarara General Service Unit in Elgeyo Marakwet County, Interior CS Professor Kithure Kindiki said banditry had been categorized together with the terrorism, and multi-agency security forces were aggressively pursuing commanders. George Kaisi tells us more.
Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki on Monday held engagement and consultative forum with herders elders in the elected leaders from Meru North in Kibiru Grounds, Tigania West, Meru County. During the meeting, the Cabinet Secretary said security forces have taken measures to strengthen ongoing efforts of achieving complete normalcy within 2 weeks. A similar meeting was held in the camp of frontline security forces in Elgeyo Marakwet County, where the Cabinet Secretary said livestock theft had been listed in the same category with terrorism.
Kazi ya wizi wa ng'ombe ni kama terrorism. Na vile special forces imetusaidia katika kupigana na magaidi, suluhisho ya hii wakora sugu, wale commanders wakali, we will also ask the special forces to come and support.
While regretting the deaths and injuries witnessed in the counties where bandits attacks have occurred, Kindiki called on local communities to volunteer intelligence on persons within the area aiding criminal activities.
As you continue to sustain the already prevailing peace, we now want to venture into peace building activities, and we will now bring in other stakeholders.
As a long-term action, the minister approved the construction of a school along Kerio Valley region where children from various communities will learn and live together so as to create a new generation that is not involved in culture of cattle rustling.
We want to build a number of schools along this valley, schools which will be boarding schools, and in these schools we will bring in children from both communities across the river to learn together, because we believe that no child is born a bandit.
George Kayesi, Lookuptv.
Now, Stephen Hinga, an administration police officer, started using alcohol and abusing drugs at the age of 13, and by the end of 2016, the officer had started having headaches, which at first he thought was caused by environmental changes because he had just been transferred from Marsabit to Nakuru County. Things, however, took a different turn on the morning of December 27, 2016, when Constable Hinga, who had been assigned to the Bahati police camp in Nakuru, lost his sight, all due to drug and alcohol abuse. Maureen Bosire reports.
A personal experience transformed him to an agent of change. His battle with alcohol addiction has now made him a champion for reform. An officer of the law, Stephen Hinga, had a journey of battling alcohol and substance abuse that nearly cost his life.
Kama vile nimesema, siku zaliwa nilikuwa kipovu. Ulemavu wa kutoona ni ulinipata. Nilianza uvutaji wa bangi nilikuwa na miaka 13.
Later, Hinga was transferred to India, where the tumor was removed, but he couldn't see again. The police officer, however, considers himself lucky to be alive after he was registered in rehabilitation and training in the Kenya Society for the Blind, and the National Police Service says it has helped him.
Hapo nikaenda India, nikafanywa radio surgery. Na hapo ndio niliza dokuza daktari, mbona hii tumor na ilitolewa nikarudi. Akaniambia utumizi wa bangi unaweza kuwa unasababisha. Kando na kwamba huwa anafanya kazi na walemavu, bado mimi huwa nafanya kazi na kupinga madawa za kulevya, drugs and substances abuse. Kweli ni kwamba ziko mingi mitaani, iko mingi kwa vijiji, na tangu nianze hiyo mambo, leo ndio na launch officially kampeni yangu na wengine ambao nimeweza kurehabilitate, nimeweza kushika mkono ambao wameathiriwa na drugs.
Alan Washira, who is a teacher at Jacaranda Primary School, a drug addict and an alcoholic, reveals that his addiction at 25 years old cost him his relationship with the love of his life.
Stress zangu zilinionesha afadhali nikunywe. Nikawa ninakunywa jioni mpaka nikazoea sasa.
According to Peter Tena, a resident of Nakuru County, consumption of bang in Kenya has increased by 90% in the past 5 years. Now, Tena is calling for detailed cooperation between Ministry of Interior Affairs and the National Authority of the Campaign Against Drug Abuse.
Sasa katika jamii, bangi na pombe, hakika bangi inavutwa mpaka kwa vijiji. Bangi inavutwa mpaka wazazi wamechukua mikono juu. Isi wetu William RUTO na serikali nzima ya Kenya Kwanza, hili jambo, sheria zote zile zilikuwa zinahusika katika uvutaji wa bangi na pombe zirejeshwe kikamilifu katika police station.
Maureen Bosire, Lookuptv.
On to matters, farming and coffee farmers in Embu County have vowed to stage a protest at the coffee mill to ensure the ejection of workers at the factory who they claim are related to the managers and aid in coffee stalling, leading to losses for the farmers. This comes as the police officers arrested several coffee truck drivers found in possession of stolen coffee. Majid Hussein with the details.
Coffee theft has been on a rampant with different cases being reported in Embu County. Embu North Sub-County Police Commander Abdullahi Alio says to deal with the menace that has become a thorn in the flesh of the farmers, security has been beefed up at night. However, the enemy has been the enemy within the truck. Drivers found culpable of making away with the coffee that they are entrusted to transport.
Kuanzia kesho nafikiri tutawakamata wale wamebaki inside job, wale wako ndani kwa hiyo factory. Tumekuwa na complaint mingi sana na sisi hatukuwa tumejua kumbe hivi vitu zinaiba kwa factory ndani na hawa managers wale wako ndani hapo. So kuanzia sasa hivi tumejua sasa, kwa vile tulikuwa tunakimbiza malori usiku, tunakimbiza magari, lakini tumeanza kujua kumbe ni kitu hata naiba saa 9 mchana. So ni kama hao wenyewe wale wanasimamia hapo ndio inakuwa wizi inafanyika hapo ndani. So tutaweka kwa vile usiku tunaweka security by inachungwa na administration police service, lakini mchana wanawekanga security yao because hata yeye hao wenyewe watajua because hiyo vitu ilitoka wapi na hapo, na tutapanga na kamati tuone kama mchana hata tuweke security.
Sita nilikuja kuelewa kuna gari aina ya tunaitanga nguruwe iliingia pale Murwe, na vile iliingia hiyo gari ilisemekana ilikuwa na mtu ambaye ni likara. Wakati iliingia pale walienda wakafungua hiyo gari na wakaanza kutoa kahawa.
Alio further said it was through the information from the farmers that they managed to intercept the consignment worth millions of shillings. Following the arrest, coffee farmers have vowed to stage a protest at the coffee mill to ensure ejection of workers at the factory, who they claim are related to the managers and aid coffee stealing. The farmers also applauded the police for good work and are calling for Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Governor Cecily Mbarire to intervene and ensure all coffee thieves are brought to book.
Na tena kuna watu ambao tumeanjiri, tumekuja kuelewa hao sio wafanyikazi wetu au ni wezi. Tumeanjiri wezi. Kwa hivyo sisi hatuna mambo na wao, tunataka watoke kwa miro yetu haraka iwezekanavyo.
Abdimajid Hussein, Lookuptv.
Well, that story by Majid Hussein wraps up our news highlights this particular morning here on the Morning Drift. At this particular moment in time, we take a short breather. We'll be back to, of course, talk about matters, wrangles between the county governments and national government. A day after President William Ruto signed the additional allocation bill of 2023 that will see county governments receive an additional 46.3 billion shillings in the financial year 2023-2024. That is immediately after this break. Don't go away.
Once again, tuko hapa Angel Center for Abandoned Kids, all because of you.
My name is Catherine Wanjiru. I am the admin, Angel Center for Abandoned Children. Our founder is Wamaitha Mwangi. We currently have 64 children, 32 going to school, and among those 32, 2 are special children, and we are left at the home with 32, now the toddlers and the infants. To the RUTO Foundation, thank you so much for remembering us. Guys, we lack words. We lack words. Amazing. We don't know what to say. Thank you for remembering us. You made a promise and you have delivered. And may God bless you. To my fellow Kenyans, as usual, cheza loto, sio ndoto. Angel Center tumeshinda loto.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the RUTO Foundation.
which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
University of Nairobi is a distinguished institution of higher learning dedicated to nurturing your intellectual curiosity and pushing the boundaries of knowledge. From state-of-the-art laboratories to modern libraries equipped with the latest resources, we provide you with the tools you need to succeed. Choose from a wide range of programs designed to prepare you for challenges of tomorrow's world. Whether in STEM, humanities, business, or the arts, our strong industry connections and career service support will help you translate your education into meaningful career opportunities upon graduation. Join a vibrant community of scholars from around the world, fostering cultural exchange, collaboration, and lifelong friendships. Book your space now for September intakes. Log in to https://www.uonbi.ac.ke for a wide range of courses to choose from. You can also contact +254 020 491 0000 or email us at pr@ounbi.ac.ke.
Tere, mambo ni mawili, kufikisha, kumwaga na kurudi. Kulala ni mwaka mpya.
Muka we mse. Nini mbaya? Wewe kwani vile dereva anaendesha gari vibaya, lazima tususe. Anaendesha gari na kwa simu the whole time, hata angalia barabara. Wewe, mwaka iliyopita peke yake watu zaidi ya 3,000 walipoteza maisha yao barabarani kwa sababu ya tabia kama hizo. Hautatuangamiza tukiona.
Naomba msamaha, nitakupa vizuri.
Wameomba msamaha. Sasa tuende tusafiri kwa mwendo wa aste.
Dere Smart hufikisha abiria salama. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na European Union.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
Well, many thanks for staying with us. You're just in time for the big conversation here on the Morning Drift. The conversation, of course, this particular morning surrounding the wrangles between the county governments and the national government. There's been debate surrounding not only the issue of funding to county governments, because governors, as recent as 2 weeks ago, insisted, and of course that is led by the chairperson of the Council of Governors, Kirinyaga Governor Anne Mwimbi Waiguru, that they do want 450 billion shillings in the financial year 2024-2025, as opposed to the proposed 391 billion. Now, apart from that, there's also been the issue of a transfer of devolved functions to the county governments. President William RUTO did promise during the devolution conference in Uasin Gishu County last year in August that within 2 months all functions will be devolved or fully transferred to the county governments. That has not been the case yet. Now, this particular morning, I'm joined by Mr. Eric Mungai, who is a political analyst. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, KEITANY.
Pleasure to have you this morning.
Should I say Happy New Year? I haven't seen you this year. At least we haven't been on set together. I'm happy this morning. Welcome to the viewers of Lookuptv. It's a good week for us to discuss issues affecting the nation. And we see how we can shape. I usually say this country belongs to all of us. Those that agree and those that disagree. We have a responsibility to forge a country. Even when we have disagreements between the county and the national level, we still have a responsibility to grow this country together. So I'm happy to be here this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm also joined by Mr. William Adenge, the president of the Solomonic Movement. A very good morning to you, sir.
Hey, good morning to you.
Pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Of course, we'll be joined by Wakili Fanyamambe Kinuthia in a moment. But, gentlemen, to begin this particular conversation, I want to begin with you, Mr. William. The president yesterday signed the county government's additional allocations bill. And of course, that means county governments will get an additional 46.3 billion shillings in the current financial year, 2023-2024. Now, is there anything for counties to smile about in regards to these particular additional funds in this financial year?
Actually, you know, the problem that we have in Kenya is not legislation or even the framework. The problem is actually every now and then the implementation. So if you ask me whether there's something to smile about for the counties, I'm not sure. Time will tell.
Well, Mr. Mungai, governors have been crying about funding. Now, if at all they're getting additional funds from the national government, Mr. Adenge talks about implementing it being the main concern. Now, is it a move that is set to bolster the performance of county governments?
Thank you, KEITANY. I've just been reminded of a song. Do you see anything to smile about? When you ask that question. But let me say there is a lot to smile about. I believe that the implementation of the Kenyan Constitution, the 2010 Constitution that establishes county government, we've made several strides in making sure that we implement. And part of the allocation of funds has been a big thorn and devolvement of functions, because county governments have several functions that have been devolved to them by the Constitution, and one of the most contentious one is health. You are aware that the medics are about to go on strike based on a couple of reasons. The other devolved function is housing, which also has sort of been held captive by, so to speak, the county governments feel that the national government has held them captive. And so, implementation of the 2010 Constitution is a progressive issue. In terms of resource allocation, the Constitution does demand that a certain threshold of the total revenue must be shared to the county governments based on various parameters. Now, as my colleague here says, it's the main issue has not been an issue of legislation, because there is no shortage of laws and framework in Kenya. The major issue has been an issue of, one, are the resources available? And secondly, there has been a feeling by the county governments that most of the resources are held by the national government, and the national government has failed to deploy these resources to them. But be that as it may, it's important for the viewer to also understand that the county government also has a responsibility to collect revenue, what is called own source revenue, at the county levels. And if you look at a bulk of counties and how they have been raising revenue, they vary from county to county. For instance, you will find that the Narok County government raises most of their revenue from conservation. You will find that Nairobi does not have that prerogative. It will raise most of their revenue, say from traders, from parking, from fees, administration fees. So different counties have different ways of raising revenue. But what is shocking is that there are counties that are not able to raise revenue. You saw what the president signed, was it 2 days ago or was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
You realize that some county governments have been unable to even build their own headquarters, such as Lamu. They have been unable to build their own headquarters. Nyandarua have had to be assisted to build their own headquarters. So yes, there are teething problems, but I think that those can be solved with time.
Now, very good morning to you, Wakili Fanyamambo Kinuthia. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Very good morning to you.
Now, the 46.3 billion, which was, signed yesterday into law by President William Ruto, is not just, funds released to counties to do whatever they want to do with the money, but specifically for the subsidized fertilizer program, for the county aggregation packs, and construction of county headquarters in 5 counties. In your opinion, are these issues that, should be prioritized at the moment?
I'd like to start by asking you, how much is being allocated to State House in 1 year? Then if Kenyans can answer that question, then we have an answer as to why are we having a conversation about 46 billion. It's like $1 billion to a county. There are 47 at Itatosha, and State House alone for renovation, they get $1 billion for building that podium, presidential dais to just come and address us, another 600 million. Renovating DP Gashagua's house, a house that was built for 400 million is being renovated at 600 million. It's like buying a car for 1 million shillings. And then you spend 1.5 times 1.5 million shillings taking it to the garage. Sometimes I try to simplify things for Kenyans to understand that my car is worth 1 million, but I have spent 1.5 million in the garage fixing that car. And that's why Kenyans don't understand. So what are we celebrating? The president giving counties 46 billion. I am even ashamed to say how much was allocated to State House. Kenyans know. Close to what all the counties get combined. One place, State House, so that they can have to their disposal $1 billion a day, which is being given to counties to spend in a year. So let's not have a conversation about it. There's no priority in devolution. You create a big hype about a function where money was being allocated to counties, but people are not interrogating how much is being allocated to State House. And State House is one place. And it doesn't have the number of staff that counties have, all combined. So it's an insult to devolution. I think if what was allocated to State House was given to counties, and what was given to counties allocated to State House, we would be having a conversation about improving devolution. But right now, it's not a conversation about improving devolution.
Okay, the thing is, Wakili, you talk about, the funds set aside for renovations of, the Rigathi Gachagua Deputy President's residence in Karen, State House, which they said they need, even more funds to complete the renovations at State House Nairobi. Talking about funds to counties, governors do want 450 billion from the current proposed 391 billion. Now, there's the issue of, accountability, because if at all they're given that money, can governors be accountable? And where do they prioritize these funds? What is the priority of these, funds? What projects are they prioritizing? Because according to a report by the Control of Budget, 19 counties only spent less than 10% of the funds disbursed to them on development. Most of the funds went on, to recurrent expenditures, salaries and allowances. So, is the money they've been given, since the, induction of, devolved units, have they, been accountable for those funds, for them to, want more? Because that is the big question on the table as well.
First and foremost, are they even capable of being accountable? Let's start there. I'll tell you a story of a county without mentioning that needed to build a referral hospital. And they went aside and set a budget of 300 and something million shillings. And then the architectural engineers came and they realized that the sewer line for that whole county had passed through part of what was the hospital. Moving that sewer line alone would have cost 100 million. Long story short, the 300 million was spent and the hospital was not built. There was a provision in our constitution that for you to become MCA, you need to be a degree holder. And people thought that that is to keep away people who have not been to the university. They were wrong. Let me tell you, urban planning is a degree that takes 5 years at the university. And then now you have urban planning engineers coming to a committee led by MCAs, some of who have never seen the doors of Form 2. And they are supposed to discuss urban planning. And then you wonder why a sewer line is going through a building within the CBD. Unless and until we get to a point where we start appreciating the value of education for our elected members of county assembly. And I'm not saying all of them have not been to school. There's a time there was a feature about Meru where there were very many PhD holders, and that was a beautiful thing. The problem we have is some of them are not even, you know, I tell Kenyans, at class 8, you never did any maths that was more than 10 million shillings. Never. Now that person has left, gone to the county assembly, he's seeing 9 zeros following a number, and he's wondering, so he counts from this side, there are 9. He counts from this, he's never seen a billion. He has never seen a billion written on paper. And now that person is supposed to go and discuss billions for the county. And then you wonder why we are where we are with our counties. I insist again, the first time all of us saw a billion written on paper in an education forum was for those who went to university. Even in high school, it wasn't there. So now you are telling us somebody who has never seen a billion in their life written somewhere on a paper is seeing it for the first time in the county assembly, and he's being told it is not 1, there are 5. And then those people again who actually never saw the doors of university, health is a devolved function, are the ones who are discussing doctors' remuneration. They will go on strike. Because this person cannot understand that post-high school, which some of them never even went to, somebody went to school for another 7 years to study medicine. And that person is now a doctor within that county. And this MCA who has no idea what it takes to study for 7 years is determining the salary of this doctor. So you're talking of accountability. Higher. The law is, I don't know. MCAs are supposed to vet CASs. I mean, the equivalent of the CS at the county assembly, the ministers for that matter. The CEC is supposed to be a degree holder. The MCA comes with his half-page CV, and he's supposed to vet a master's holder to become a CEC. What questions will they ask? So they vetted the ministers we have. What ministers did they give us? Did they even have the capacity to understand what is required of that minister? So the bulk of our counties need to be disbanded. And we need to go back and follow the Elections Act and make sure that we are electing MCAs who are degree holders, who are capable of understanding things from health to education to urban planning. You come with a degree of hata kama ni counseling psychologist, at least when you did the first year of university, you were taught communication skills. And that is one of the other things that we lack, so we are not even able to communicate what the county is doing with the monies. So I think let's first disband them before we even talk about accountability, because we're expecting something from the bulk of people who are not even able to deliver.
Well, Mr. Denge, yes. Just like Mr. Wakili Fanyamama Kinuthia puts it, because it is something of concern, because at the moment, and I was alluding to in my introduction, is that, for example, Baringo County Assembly, MCAs do get monthly sitting allowances of up to 152,000 Kenya shillings.
Yes.
Now, the question is, if they are to, oversee these functions, for example, health, like he has alluded to, and discuss issues surrounding, doctors and all that, because health is a devolved function, although not fully, but we'll talk about functions that, are said to be, should be devolved fully or transferred to the county governments fully. Is there a need to relook, like Wakili talks about it, at, the qualifications as the bare minimum issue to address in regards to the people we elect into office for the position of member of county assembly?
Well, I agree with Wakili, but education, the whole matter doesn't stop at education. For example, my county, Siaya, where we all know that if you were to throw a stone, you're most likely to hit a professor with it. Yeah, so looking at it, comparing these counties and how much they have spent on development, has Siaya County performed better? Where we have professors in positions such as members of parliament. They are educated. We are talking about, Wakili is talking about State House, where we had 700 million allocated for the construction of a dais, right? And 400 million allocated for is it 600 million for the repair of the deputy president's residential, yeah? And also the same deputy president is a learned man, but how much did he use for the purchase of curtains out of the public offers? 10 million. 18 million. Okay, 10 million for the curtains and 7 million for the furniture. So actually, these are educated people, yeah? So actually what we are having in common between the uneducated and the educated is misappropriation of funds and greed and just corruption. So it doesn't stop at education, but I do agree that we have a problem in this country, and maybe we should just have a conversation with ourselves and wonder why. Because some things like I don't have to go to school, actually to go to the university level to understand that 10 minus 1 equals to 9. So why, if I was running a kiosk and I'm making shillings 10,000, how logical will it be for me to pay 9,000 for salaries and remain with 1,000 for as a profit? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mungai, does it really boil down to education? Because the issue of oversight is not only a function of, you know, members of county assembly, but also of the Senate. But again, you find scenarios. For example, you know, if we talk about issues of, you know, ward development funds. Now, it was termed as an illegal fund, but most counties do have that particular fund. For example, Nairobi County had such a fund with, you know, the county government allocating somewhere in the figure around 2 billion to the 85 wards. Now, the argument surrounding that is that the MCS being awarded these funds is a move by, you know, county chiefs to, of course, shut them up and ensure that, you know, they just go as the governor wants. So how do we ensure that MCAs are able to undertake their mandate of oversight of these county governments?
Thank you, KEITANY. You know, most of the times, first I'm happy to see Fanya Mambo. I have heard of him, but I have not seen him this year. Happy New Year, Fanya Mambo.
Happy New Year to you.
You know, I like agreeing with him and disagreeing where appropriate. And Fanya Mambo suggests that because there is a rat in the house, we should burn the whole house. I believe there are remedial things that we can do. And you know, KEITANY, there is no cure for bad manners. You cannot legislate bad manners. What county governments have taught us is that the educated and the educated, when it comes to dipping their hand in the till, there is sort of a competition on who does it best. And the most unfortunate thing is that the manner of theft between the ones that have gone to school and the ones that haven't gone to school, you'd expect that perhaps the one who has gone to school has a better way of stealing than the one who hasn't gone to school. Unfortunately, we have just come to see that one governor is busy, say, buying chicks at inflated prices and giving them to wananchi. Another governor will find that the best way to steal is, say, to buy a 7 million Kenya shillings chair. And there's something that has been raised which I think is very critical, and that is the ability to oversight. Now, I agree with my colleagues here that, you know, sometimes when you're auditing billions, the numbers can be mind-boggling. Because you imagine that in the farthest end of this country, because I would assume that if you're running at least for MCA in Nairobi, perhaps you have interacted with education in one way or another. But I'm just imagining in the far-flung counties where sometimes, like in the bandit areas, where sometimes it's difficult for people to go to school. And they have to audit a governor there in terms of healthcare, in terms of agriculture, in terms of livestock, on how they have spent money. First and foremost, when it comes to the budgeting process, do they understand what a budget is? Do they understand what are budget estimates? When it comes to public participation, where the public needs to go and figure out what exactly they need for themselves, do the members of the public understand what needs to go into a budget, how to budget for the same when they are giving their views. Because you see, this is how I can put it. The leaders that we get are a subset of the total population. Now, if you have 10 fools, we are likely to pick one fool from the 10. Because the mistake sometimes we make as Kenyans, we assume that there is a special breed of people that we are going to get from amongst ourselves who will become our leaders. If we are 11 thieves and we do an election, chances are high we are going to elect one of the thieves. And sometimes we make the mistake of imagining, even we have tried sorting it out, we have said, okay, let us have people like, say, even in our elections, let's have a, say, representative of the National Council of Churches of Kenya. Why? Because we believe, you know, they are holy. We have tried, even last time we took Ole Sapit and the choir to Bombers of Kenya to try and sing for us and, you know, massage our hearts. But at the end of the day, what turns out? That even in the churches themselves, as we have seen, there is corruption. And therefore, KEITANY, the issue is not an issue of education. It's important, but I do not think it's the issue. I think we have a moral problem as a country whereby many of us lack the opportunity to steal, so we complain while we are outside because the opportunity is not available. If today, KEITANY, you go to your village and vie for governor, and you are elected governor, and you go home after 5 or 10 years without stealing anything, and you go back to your quarter piece of land where you used to live, when villagers are passing there, they say you were very foolish. Because they gave you an opportunity to go and steal, and you are not able to steal.
So how do you deal with this issue once and for all then?
So the issue is an issue of the heart. It's not a legislative. You see, Wakili is a lawyer here. Eh? There is no want of laws that deal with the consequences of theft. The laws are there. But it's just that we know the governor is a thief, the MCAs are thieves, members of the public are thieves. When you go to the judiciary, you know that the magistrate is also a thief. You know that the judge on the cadre is also a thief. So we have a society that is made up of a conglomeration of vices, and therefore we are likely to choose from the same people. And therefore, we need to have a national conversation, which is important, and say, okay, what are the values? Because Article 10, I think it's Article 10 of the Constitution that speaks to national values. It's Article? I think it's Article 10. Yes, Article 10 that speaks of national values. But do we have, I mean, do these national values, when a governor is, and his treasurer are speaking about billions that have been allocated to him, does the issue of national values really cross their mind? No, it doesn't. So we need to have a national conversation that speaks to the fact that, yes, education is important, but education is not a panacea to theft. Because the more educated you are, when you are immoral, you're going to find ways, sophisticated ways of stealing from the Kenyan public.
Well, thank you very much. Wakili, if it does not boil down to education, boils down to, you know, because at the end of the day, they're very learned people, even in, you know, key government installations who've, you know, embezzled billions of money. But at the end of the day, like Mr. Mungai says, they end up being elected into, you know, key positions, be it in the devolved units or even National Assembly. But my key concern, like I said, is accountability. Then, if at all we cannot be able to, you know, resolve the issue of electing people with integrity into office, then it means we can never and will never be able to address the issue of accountability at all. Because at the end of the day, if even the money that we get is embezzled on, you know, hospitality and you know, foreign trips, local trips, instead of, you know, development, then devolution will be of no importance to us.
I've always asked people, why do you take your children to school? For them to be led by those who did not go to school? Is that why you took your children to school? So that anytime I want a house help for my house, I insist akuwe mtoto akuwe ni wa form 4. They can read and write so that they can do CBC with my daughter. But when I want MCA, I go for birth certificate. So house help, you want form 4. But MCA, birth certificate is enough. What kind of country are we building? That to discuss our billions, to discuss education, to discuss health, birth certificate is enough. But to pick my daughter from school and bring her home and fix her Indomie and give her yogurt after school and do with her CBC, I need form 4. We are so individualistically selfish. When we are looking for something for ourselves, we look for the best. But if it is for the public, we don't care. Then we wonder why things go wrong. Let me tell you. Today, why our health is in such a chaotic and shambolic state is because the bulk of it is devolved. And the people who are supposed to sit at a committee and have a conversation around how do we make health in Nairobi, for example, work, themselves do not even understand. When you come and talk of strategic intervention, sasa huyo MCA amepotea. When you talk of a big word like sustainability, because something has got to be sustainable, they ask you, hii Kiingereza mingi ni ya nini? Iya watu wamesoma mnatu confuse hapa. But you have to make a plan for Nairobi County Health that is strategic and that is sustainable. Those words are not careless choice of words. And so you end up having health care services where medicine can be there or not be there. Because let me tell you, Vision 2030 was not created by the people who were not educated. It was created by people who had been to school. And I wish President Uhuru Kenyatta did not come up with the Big Four. I wish he just followed Big Four, I mean the Vision 2030. And I wish President William Ruto did not come up with all these other things and just focused on Vision 2030. Because it was crafted by people who had brains and people who meant well for this country. We have to create space for brains to run our country. Go to Kawangware here. Roads that used to be complete public roads have all been blocked and turned into markets. And the MCA here, and he knows and is my friend, and I keep telling him, now you've turned roads into markets to please those 5 people. And this is a road that would have served the whole nation. But he tells you, ndio wananichagua kesho. And what do these people want? A dimwit who they can tell whatever he'll do and they'll do for them. We have to start seeing people who mean well for the nation and people with a broadened understanding of the life. And I will never cease to campaign that we would rather have educated people. Look at the East African Assembly. We are a laughing stock. Just look at who we sent there. I won't mention some names. Tanzania, Uganda sent their best. They looked for the best, the most eloquent, the people who can make the best representations to go and sit at the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Kuna MP moja tulichagua huko, Jesus Christ. So, and I keep saying that is why as a nation, even we can become a laughing stock. Because we have people, let me tell you, look at Mount Kenya. And I want to give you an example of the National Assembly. People keep telling me education is not important, and I laugh at them. Look at Mount Kenya. The National Assembly, you know, there's a time I had this fiery lady she's called Bensouda. And she was speaking at the National Assembly on this housing issue. And she was throwing words, and each word meant something. And guess what? Kawajiko was in that parliament. And he was looking at Bensouda. And I could tell there was. And that's why I'm saying, eventually, a vote is decided on that thing you're calling Kizungu Mingi. And the bulk of those Mount Kenya MPs who came there because they were on a UDA ticket, if you ask them, what did you vote for? Right now, they are busy in Murang'a and every other place saying, we didn't vote for this avocado thing to be taxed.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
And they are the fourth biggest economy in the world. What is a poor third world country doing with 47 mini presidents roaming around in V8s around here? What is wrong with our heads? I've always said this constitution has a problem. 47 mini presidents roaming around in Gazlas. Some of their counties like Lamu has got how many people? Does it even deserve to be called a county? Na wanazunguka huku na magari kubwa ukijiita governor. Governor wa nini? Then you are accompanied by your wife here and she's calling herself Her Excellency. First lady of what? A county that cannot, you know, some companies in Germany have got, look at Mercedes. They have got a bigger turnover than our economy. A company. And then you have a collection of a few slums and a few residential buildings being called a county. And then that county, we are supposed to finance it. Let's have a serious conversation about the 2010 constitution. And let us say that Kenya is not ripe to have 47 mini presidents running around in V8C and calling themselves governors. We are not ripe for that. Germany, I've told you, has got 11 counties with 85 million people, the fourth biggest economy in the world. Sasa angalia Kirinyaga, inatoshana aje? And another one called Vihiga. What is the size of Vihiga? Why is it a county? We insult ourselves and then we start. Why are we even having a conversation about allocating money to them first? We should start saying shikana mikono wawili first, we make them 23. Shika jirani mkono, hiyo ni county. Shika jirani mkono, hiyo ni county. We first reduce these people and reduce these things we are calling counties, because it's a waste of public resources, to be honest. They keep telling you that most of what they get goes to recurrent expenditure. Why do we need that recurrent expenditure? If a county costs more to run than it can bring or it's worth, let's disband it. I think there are very few viable counties in this country. And I think the qualification to have a county should be viability. Munakuja muna apply. Na munaonyesha how much money you can collect on your own, how you can pay your own salaries, how you can, mpaka mukue na pesa yani munaweza kopesha other counties. But this thing of, because we look like this and we all have a similar nose, now we are called a county. No.
Mr. Adenge, from your wisdom, I'm saying from your wisdom because of the Solomonic wisdom, movement, beg your pardon, should we look at the constitution of Kenya 2010? Because if at all we have 47 county governments, but still Kenyans are facing the same problems. For example, he's talked about the health function, which is 90% devolved, but still there's some portion of it with the national government. The issues have not been addressed, because the biggest concern, and I attended the meeting between section of the Council of Governors led by Kirinyaga Governor Anwar Guru and his Nyeri counterpart Mutai Kahiga. And Kahiga said that the issue of counties was to ensure that Kenyans in the mashinani can get these services, proper services. But as it stands, Kenyans are not getting those proper services. Is there a need to relook into that constitution and, like Mr. Kinuthia says, defund some of these counties, or disband some of these counties, or merge them if it's possible? Yeah. Or do we need to relook at how we can ensure that these devolved units work?
Yeah, I agree that there are stones that should be unturned, and there are unturned stones also that should be turned again. But before I get into that, let me say something on what Wakili said about the Kizungumingi thing, education, and how voters actually reason when they are going to cast their ballots. And Wakili is very, very keen on blaming Wanjiku for the choices that they make. But I'm of a different opinion. I blame the intellectuals and the technocrats, because as it is, you know, the technocrats are there to be advising these leaders, but who makes the decision? It's the leaders, the class 8 dropouts, the form 2 dropouts, you see. And so my problem with the intellectuals is this. You know, leadership, to get into leadership, you have to go through a political process. But now politics is a different world. It's murky, and you have to be cantankerous in a particular manner in order to appease the masses. Because as we all know, the way I'm reasoning now and the way Wakili is reasoning now will be completely different if we were to be 1,000 of us here. Yeah? So it is people like Wakili who have been to school for 40 years, who know everything, who have read books, who have the ability and the power to read books such as Why Nations Fail, and to get all the possible reasons why Kenya is poor, to go and speak to the masses in a language that they understand, and to win their hearts so that they can be voted in. But apparently the educated people, the intellectual, the technocrats, soon forget how to speak like Mwananchi, soon forget how to dress like Mwananchi, soon forget how to relate to Mwananchi. So I actually blame the intellectuals for not being as firm as it should be, for not being as tactical as they should be in order to woo these voters to vote them into office. Now, we all agree that devolution was a good thing for Kenya, and actually it's been a good thing for so many other civilizations in the world, because we are actually talking about civilization. Yeah, those days when a particular community had to go to beg at State House, but to beg Moi to be politically correct in order to see a road built in their village. A case example is from Siaya to Alego Songa. Yeah? It's a distance of, let's say, 30 kilometers. And I remember those days, it could even take you 2 hours, especially during the rainy days, because we didn't have a tarmac road. Yeah? But after devolution, we now have that road, and it only takes you 20 minutes from Siaya town to my constituency. So that's because of devolution. So, but Wakili is right on Germany, but bringing Germany to Kenya will not be practical. You see, even as we are talking about this democracy and all this setup that we are seeing in the other developed world, we must consider that we are special in a particular manner. Because devolution is about representation and bringing power back home. But how many tribes do we have in Kenya, and how many tribes, if any, do we have in Germany? So by having 11 counties, as Germany is, we'll lock out some of these communities into power, and they will feel misrepresented.
Well, so you can't, are we really looking at, you can't allow him to argue like that on national TV. Tanzania has 102 tribes. So are they going to have 102 counties?
Actually, that is the question I wanted to ask him, because if it's about power, should we really prioritize power over development projects, over the needs of, millions of Kenyans out here?
Tell him Congo has 300 tribes. Are they going to have 300 counties, one for each tribe? You can't reason like that. It's not allowed.
Okay, Congo has such a number of tribes as we are saying, but look at us. Are we anywhere comparable to Congo? We
cannot have a county for every tribe.
I mean, one would argue, shouldn't really be about the issue of power, Okay, it could be easily, what you're trying to say in simple terms is that we're devolving power. We're not devolving, development to mashinani or so.
Actually, power begets development. I don't know how a community will be developed if they are not powerful. Because power, we are talking about financial power, financial muscles, you see. Yeah, so power begets development.
Mr. Mungai, where do you sit on this issue?
We keep forgetting. That's the challenge with us Kenyans. One of the reasons why, there's a context to devolution. You remember we started with Majimbo. And for a long time, Majimbo was always fought because of the fact that, there was a constant belief that it would disenfranchise and, disintegrate Kenyans. When we got devolution, it was supposed to be a cure and to devolve power, first and foremost. because there was this notion that all power was concentrated at the presidential level, and therefore, because all of us were focused on the national level, we sort of wanted to devolve power to the county levels. Unfortunately, we ended up with semi-gods, 47 semi-gods, and their wives in tow, and some others with their husbands in tow at the county level. But one of the solutions of what we thought would be a lasting solution, especially after every 5 years, was the ability to devolve power, which unfortunately we are still stuck at the national level. It's important to understand that history because every country has unique challenges. For instance, Japan, which has a population of I think 120 million, has 47 county governments. It's functioning well. Wakili has talked about Germany. And so every country has a context within which things work in that country. For instance, if you look at DRC with the number of tribes, there is a lot of instability in DRC. Things are not working for them as much as they have the population and the numbers work for them. Look at a country like Nigeria. They also have devolved units. Again, they have devolved gods into the different county. In fact, sometimes I think the governors of Kenya, they want to emulate the governors of Nigeria. Because when you go to Nigeria, the governors are actually, these ones are semi-gods. The governors of Nigeria are gods. And therefore, sometimes I think for benchmarking, the governors of Kenya need to visit Nigeria more. And you know, Nigeria also has a lot of things to offer over and above power. But this is to say that the Kenyan context deserves a Kenyan solution.
What is that solution?
Because if you look at the 47 county governments, it's not necessarily so that a county government is mirrored on the tribe. It's not necessarily so. Because when you look at some county governments, they actually have more than one tribe in it. If you go to, say, a county like Embu, you will find there are people from Bere, you will find there are natives from Embu. So there are counties that actually have several tribes coming together to form a county. And you find a scenario whereby one community gives a deputy, because representation is key. At the end of the day, people must feel that their issues have been represented. And that is why sometimes when it comes to voting, despite the fact that Adenga said in Siaya, if you throw a stone, you're likely to hit a professor. But look at our voting patterns. If I go to Siaya today and close my eyes, and I do a survey and ask, who are you going to vote for president? I can almost with certainty know that 95% of the respondent will vote in a particular way. If I go to Central Kenya and I ask them, who are you going to vote for president? I can almost to a certain extent know that 60% of those voters are going to vote in a certain direction. And that is why I said education is good, it's good. But education in itself is not the only solution to the problems that continue to bedevil us. Now I'll give you another example. Most of the elites and technocrats in Kenya, when you ask them to vie for political seats, they say politics is dirty business. You know, you will go to some place, they say, mimi hata stakangi maneno ya siasa, mimi maneno ya siasa ni maneno yenyu. But what happens? Because the technocrats and the elite, the so-called elite of the society, have refused to go into politics, and they leave what they call dirty to the dirty Kenyans, you get MPs who go and assent to the housing bill, and you who is the elite, you who has nothing to do with politics, it is your salary that gets deducted a percentage. Because the majority of the Kenyans are in the informal sector, and it is you, the elite, who allow them to go and vote because you can't dirtify yourself, the same people who are voted in are the same people that go and make policies that deduct your salary at the end of the day. It is the same people who go and vote on other taxation measures that directly affect your pockets. And therefore, we need to have a very candid discussion as a country. And the truth is, devolution is working, albeit it's limping, but it is working. There are places in this country, in fact, one of the things I recommend is that part of what should be dispersed is Kera. Is it Kenha, Kura, and Kera? Yes, Kera. And part of the reason is because a bulk of the roads that are held by Kera are actually supposed to go to the county governments. There are counties today that are seeing the earth mover for the first time, constructing a road for them, as opposed to when they would have to send their DC or their PC to come to Nairobi and beg the president for development, a habit which I'm seeing, by the way, cropping up recently, people begging the president to, you know, do this for us, do X for us, but that has been more or less catered for under devolution.
Now, gentlemen, if we cannot sort out the issue of accountability, is there need to, you know, probably have laws in place? Because, for example, I'll use an example of Nairobi County because it is where we are. Nairobi County in 4 months, they spent 176 million shillings in local travels, 11.9 million shillings in foreign travels, 58 million shillings on fuel, and 28 million shillings on hospitality. Wakili, starting with you, because accountability and oversight, MCAs have probably failed in their issue of, on you know, their role of oversight, because, you know, probably they're beneficiaries of this particular you know, local trips, foreign trips, and this hospitality, you know, funds spent on, you know, hospitality. Is there a way we can relook and probably enact laws that will ensure that, let's say, for example, a certain percentage of, you know, funds disbursed to you should be channeled to development projects, as opposed to how it is at the moment? Because even as we speak, for example, in the last half financial year 2022-2023, county governments spent 434 million on allowances to MCAs. In the half of you know, financial year 2023-2024, the figure rised from 434 million to 703 million. Meaning, you know, there's no law that stops, you know, these county governments from doing whatever they want with this money. Is it time we look at, you know, enacting laws probably that will guide the, you know, priority in terms of using these funds disbursed to counties?
I think the bigger question should be, if we did not have those MCAs, would we have wasted that money? It goes to a point where President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta put NMS in charge of Nairobi, much to the noise of many people, but we saw what NMS did. Some of us are still struggling to see what Sakaja has done in the last few years. He's been governor. We are struggling. We really hope we had something we could point to.
For the record, Governor Johnson Sakaja is one of the governors who are agitating that the funds should be increased.
Yes, but increased for what? For the same things he's saying. Spend on fuel, spend on MCAs, spend on the wrong things. I mean, they need to understand that that 700 million, had it gone to drugs, they're the same people who keep, you know, it's like being insane. You give MCAs, how many are they? Less than 200. They're about 125 in total. 85 elected plus the nominated, they're about 125. So you spend that much money on allowances. And then all the public hospitals within this city have a problem of having enough drugs. They keep having a hue and cry and saying Bagavi has a shortage of this. I don't know, Motoine has a shortage of this. The public hospitals have a shortage of essential drugs. But MCAs have got money for local travel and money to fuel their cars and money to do all these things. The doctors are about to go on strike. Please explain to me, like a standard 2 child, why an MCA is more important than a doctor who is about to perform an operation that would save life. And why an MCA is not going on strike because their salary is paid on time, but the doctors have not been paid on time. I struggle to understand why a governor has never gone on strike because his salary is not paid, but his workers are unpaid. Have you ever heard of a governor who's not paid? So we just have people, and it's good. You elect people who are not empathetic to your needs, and people who don't care about Mwananchi because they don't. And then you wonder why we are getting the results we are getting. We need to start thinking of leaders and start looking for people who are empathetic, people who feel the pain of the others, people who care about others, people who are almost, and I keep saying, and I'm not campaigning for him, but Professor Kivuta Kibwana showed that example. I remember one time when the MCAs went against him, And he told the president, please come and dissolve our county because it is corrupt. And everybody who had gone against Kivutha Kibwana was not re-elected in the next election. I think only one MCA came back. And that one is because he stuck with Professor Kivutha Kibwana. These are the kind of leaders, many of whom offer themselves at the elections. But our people go for the wrong ones all the time. They go for the ones who give them 100 bob, 50 bob, 70 shillings, 200 shillings. And then they wonder why things are wrong. So this boils down to the voter, whether you like it or not. Because what we have are not leaders. We have people occupying positions of leadership. You come and say, tunataka yule msee alikuwa anachoma mitura hapa kwetu, tuyo ndio tutachagua. Yes, you have a mitura person now occupying the office of a leader. He's not a leader. Yeah, he was popular in football in the whole village. Everybody knew him, so you decided to make him MCA. Good. He's a footballer occupying the position of an MCA. He's not an MCA. Kuna mtu alikuwa anapiga magetu ngumi, anafanya vipindre. People decided to make him governor. What did he become? He became a circus star occupying the office of a governor. He's not a governor. So you have to start looking for someone who is a leader in the area, in your village, in some way or another, someone who has shown leadership qualities, and make him MCA or MP or governor or senator. Then you will have a leader occupying a position of leadership. But if you have the local comedian, anatuchekeshanga, alikuwa anakuja kwa ile show ya TV anatuchekesha, so he's popular. Yes, you will have a comedian occupying the office of leadership. And then you're wondering why things are not happening. This guy was a comedian for life. And what you needed was to start, and in every village, and when I talk to Kenyans, I tell them, there's this one person who started like a children's home, who started something to help the community. He's providing leadership, and he probably keeps vying, but you keep not voting for him. You want this popular guy who's excited you with a few coins and all, and what he becomes is an exciting guy occupying a position of leadership. But he's not a leader. Every place in this country, God has donated leaders, and people have shown leadership qualities. And it's time when people now start voting, they say, so and so has been doing something that shows he's a leader in our area. So let's give him a position of leadership. But not the local entertainer who dances the best there. He'll just go and dance at the county assembly or the national assembly.
Fair enough. From where you sit, Mr. Denge,
yes.
What do we need to do?
Okay. I am representing the Solomonic economic movement, and it's actually because of such problems that we actually discovering a gap in the economic model that we are using. Because let's say corruption is everywhere, even in China, but what we should be asking ourselves is the amount being stolen that significant that it can actually change the lives of Kenyans? Or it's just a drop in the ocean? So why don't we increase more money in the country so that even if some have been stolen, we still have a substantial amount that is remaining with us? And so in the Solomonic economic model, as championed by Professor Ogola, you find that we are actually talking about balance. Like to refer to the Chinese Yin-Yang philosophy, where there's left and there's right, and there's good and there's evil, there's dark and there's brightness, in order for the universe to be in such a state of balance. But what we've been having in the country, and on that note I will agree with Wakili, is education, because the previous leaders that we've had, the forefathers were not as much, were not educated, let's say that, and that's correct. But so there's something that they really overlooked, and the Solomonic economic movement is determined to fill that gap. Let's talk of one of the ways that a country actually makes money. Because Wakili was talking about comparing the turnover of Mercedes to the turnover of Kenya, and it's quite the same, yeah? But so let's talk about Forex. How do we earn Forex? Okay, the cash crops. Let me put it this way. Give me 5 cash crops that we export that brings us money. One.
Let me just cut you short, because we cannot be talking about making more money when we cannot even be accountable of the little that we have.
No, we should have a lot of money. We should have money. Then we can maybe start talking about accountability, because we are talking about 300 billion allocation to the counties. It can't do much. So, Wakili will help me here. Let's list the 5 cash crops that we export, because Kenya is an agricultural country. Yeah? 1, tea. Where does it come from? Which region? The Rift Valley region and the Central region. The other one is coffee. Where does it come from? Rift Valley and Central. The other one is miraa. Where does it come from? Mount Kenya region. The other one is avocado. Where does it come from? Mount Kenya region. And the other one is flowers. Where does it come from? So we should be asking ourselves, how many regions do we have in this country? And why are we all depending on one or 2 cows, one from Mount Kenya and one from Rift Valley, to drive this economy?
I want you to hold on to that thought, kindly, because we want to take a short breather. But I mean, from what you're saying, looking at Wakili is shaking his head a little bit. I'm not sure if he really agrees with what you're saying, but let's take a short breather, then we'll be back to conclude on that, and as well talk about the issue of absorption of these funds, and as well the circus that has been going on for months, even after the president said in 2 months' time. That was in August last year, that all functions will be transferred, all devolved functions. But up to now, that has not been the case. That is immediately after this break.
Have a proper outlook of the economy, then you have to speak to the walls and gears of the integral businesses in the country.
And I want to be able to make the youths and everybody coming up in Kenya know that this is here locally.
Men and women in the markets get inspiration to start and make sense of it all.
Just watch what everybody else is doing and just make sure you're giving back to the society.
Oof. This is the Captain's Havana.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
Na ukiwa na njoro unajifunza. Kumbuka, angalia mwenyewe. Tunakuambia ukitaka kujua tips za ukulima, ungana na sisi kwenye Lookuptv every Sunday. Unatukuta pale saa 10, tunakuonesha kuhusu ukulima. Ukulima wa mimea, ukulima wa ng'ombe, ukulima wa kuku, ukulima wa mbuzi na yote ambayo yanahusiana na ukulima. Kumbuka nini? Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali.
Thank you very much for staying with us, and in case you're joining us, we're talking about matters devolved functions and how we need to be accountable for the funds that are disbursed to these devolved units. And gentlemen, I want us to talk about the absorption of budgets, because this control of budget, Margaret Nyakango, did raise a red flag over the capacity of these devolved units in absorption of budgets. And for the record, between July and December 2023, most of the counties had only used funds disbursed to them 12% on development. And the control of budget between July and December 2023 authorized the withdrawal of 174 billion. Of the 174 billion, 150 billion went to recurrent expenditure, like I said. Now, starting with you, Mr. Mungai, as we wrap up the conversation surrounding how the expenditure of these funds in terms of where county governments should prioritize these funds to go to. Counties like Narok, there are 3 counties. Narok, Kitui, and Baringo are the only counties that this control of budget termed as counties with higher absorption rates in terms of development. Because, for example, a county like Narok, they spent 41% of the funds allocated to them on development. What are these other counties missing?
Well, KEITANY, the absorption of budget has two phases to it. One is the budgetary process, and secondly is the process of withdrawal of the resources. What do I mean by the budgetary process? When the budget cycle is finished and money is allocated to counties, it does not necessarily mean that money has been sent to counties. Okay? Because there is usually a misconception that because you have allocated, you have sent the money. So allocation mostly happens on paper. Then the national government, based on what they collect, disburses money based on what they have collected from the national level. And I say based on what they have collected, it could be wrong. Sometimes it's based on what they want to advance, they want to send to the counties. Now, there is also money collected by the county governments, which is own source revenue. Now, you must know that you cannot spend at source. So, even accessing that money in itself is a very tedious process. Now, for you to spend that money on development, you have to subject it to the procurement plan, which includes the procurement process. Now, that process in itself also takes time. So by the time you are getting to the budget in June, July, you will actually be able, for instance, the budget is ready in June, okay? Or approvals have been done in June and it has passed through the National Assembly. So disbursement say starts around August, if that happens. But most of the times, county governments will actually get that money around March. By the time you get that money and start deploying through the procurement process, you are actually nearing the end of the cycle. So you actually can't spend that money because even accessing that money becomes difficult. So that money goes back to treasury and then you start the budget process again. It becomes like a circus. But there are counties that are unable to spend because they are unable to plan properly, or because the governor has interest in that particular sums of money. So you realize one thing, and I usually tell people, especially those who want to tender with county governments, and this is unsolicited advice which should not be said on national television. If the government is not involved in your project directly, do not tender. Why? Because when money goes into the county, it's about interest. So KEITANY, you have gone and borrowed a loan of 5 million, 10 million to go and do a project with the county government. The same governor has an interest in another project of 50 million in the same county. So when money is dispersed to the county, the first priority of expenditure is not you of 5 million or 10 million with your loan. It is the 50 million where the county governor and the treasurer have interests. And that is why you see a county like Kiambu has accumulated pending bills which they are not willing to pay. But out of the total pending bills, they have only paid very few resources towards entrepreneurs. And it tells you that these people who had borrowed money, despite the fact that they are budgetary allocations, they will not get paid. Now that goes to the controller of budget as money that has not been absorbed, yet that is money that has not been paid to whoever it's supposed to be paid to. Because remember, for government to spend, except for that which they spend on recurrent, the other monies the government has to follow the public procurement guidelines, which means that there is a business person who needs to be able to tender for them to utilize that money. Okay? It therefore tells you that if that money has not been deployed, then the controller of budget will deem that money unspent. But sometimes that money is unspent on paper. Now, there is also another issue that comes up. The last controller of budget report, you will find that the county government, say, of Nairobi, did not have any development expenditure.
True.
But there is also another issue that's coming up. If you look at the total recurrent expenditure vis-a-vis what is supposed to be spent according to the PFMA Act, 30% is supposed to go to recurrent and 70% to development. But the challenge is this: the biggest workforce of counties right now as we speak are actually health workers. They spend a bulk of the total recurrent expenditure. Of course, there are ghost workers, and there are those workers that the government promised, the governor when he was campaigning promised he would employ them, so he comes with a bloated workforce. And sometimes I ask myself, when you spend money on a doctor, because what is considered infrastructure development is when you build a hospital. But I ask myself, when you spend money on a community health worker, and when you spend money on a doctor or a nurse, is that development expenditure or is that recurrent expenditure? Why? Because the health worker is a key component and a driver of that infrastructure development. Because if a county is not healthy, then you will not be able to propagate that which you call infrastructure development. So sometimes I feel like there is need for reclassification on what we actually mean when we call development expenditure.
Well, Wakili, coming to, even as you also respond to that, this is the issue of on-source revenue, and again, Narok County leads in collection of the amount of money collected in terms of on-source revenue. But the county government, since the inception of devolved units, combined, they've not met the target for on-source revenue. That is why KRA was, there's the involvement of KRA in assisting county governments in the issue of collection of on-source revenue. The issue of them meeting that target, in your own opinion, from where you sit, is it an issue of generally not meeting those targets, or are there loopholes in between that probably county chiefs could be diverting these funds?
Thank you very much. To start with, for the first time, I agree with government that KRA should be involved in collection of taxes so that there's no duplicity of collection of taxes by every other person. And county governments have a way of hiring people to come and collect revenue who behave like auctioneers. So I don't think we need that. But there's a time when John Mutudho was in charge of Nakada. And he said that at one point they counted and there was more than 1,000 bars within the Eastlands region. Not Nairobi, within the Eastlands, just 1,000 plus. So if each bar was paying about 20,000 shillings, because that's what they were paying for liquor license, then I don't know whether it's gone up or down. And when you did the maths, there's a time it was coming to more than 400 million being collected from bars alone within a specific region. But what do counties tell you they collect? Most of the time they tell you they don't collect enough. And they'll make sure that their systems are not online, they are not digital. They will do anything to make sure that they have a manual way of clamping your car and giving you a manual receipt and so on and so forth. So that even if you're taken to that room where those receipts are, you can only get drunk with receipts and papers. Counties, in my belief, collect more money than they receive from the national government. If you sat and did a serious audit of Nairobi County, they collect more money from Wananchi. But they would think about just you know, the issue of approvals for buildings. How much do you think one building pays in approvals? To just one building, and how many buildings are being built in Nairobi and Kilimani and so on and so forth? Counties collect more. That's why I say Kenya does not collect 3 trillion. Kenya perhaps collects 9 trillion. And the day we shall say that we change our law so that only KRA is allowed to collect money from everybody, and then that money is distributed to counties, mutashanga, this country will collect 10 trillion. Then we realize we don't need any other money from any other source. We don't even need to borrow. Counties collect an obnoxious and unbelievable amount of money that nobody is able to know, and they make sure that nobody is able to know. And how much money. You remember there was a time at Nairobi County when somebody who is an accountant was found with 1.2 billion in their account, and they couldn't explain because their salary was 85,000. And that's just one person. And if you want to know that counties collect money, just see how the scramble for jobs at the county. Somebody just goes there and becomes a city engineer or something just at the county level. And the houses they build, the cars they drive versus the salary they get tells you how much money counties collect. Some of them are just receptionists. But the amount of monies they run through in 1 month, and the cars they drive and the businesses they open, and how they flourish within 2, 3, 4 years. I know people who we graduated with and they would not do anything. They keep looking for county jobs. You tell them that there's a job at the national, they tell you no, Nataka county. They leave this one, they go to that county. After that they go. Somebody has been employed to counties all their life since devolution began. And for sure I can see they are 15, 20, 30 times richer than I am. And they are my classmates. And by the way, when you look at their salary and their pay slip, you laugh and they tell you, well, usijali mambo ya pay slip. So counties collect a lot more than is allocated to them by the national government. And if we were to close down those taps and say, from now on, only KRA will collect money in this country, then all that money is collected, na tuna KRA wanasema Kiambu tumeokota hii, Murang'a hii, Lamu hii, Thika hii, Nyeri hii. It's put there. And they put up digital system, not these manual ones. Trust you me, at the end of time, the amount of money that will be available in this country will be enough for everything.
Mr. Andege, did you agree with Prof? Because as recent as January, one official of the Nairobi County government by the name Daniel Odidi Ganjo was arrested because he was in cahoots with, I don't know whether to say, sorry to say, with an attaché or an intern from Mount Kenya University of, telling someone who's going to pay parking fees worth 45,000 shillings not to deposit the money into the accounts of the county government, but to the account of, the intern. But, the guy was arrested, the duo arrested, but there were concerns that a couple of weeks later, they were released. And probably that is the case within or across the 47 counties. So, is, deploying KRA the only way to deal with this issue, or, what is the other way that we can, employ or deploy to ensure that we can fill these loopholes?
Actually, along the journey, it's very easy for people to get confused, yeah? And Wakili and I and the gentleman on my left, Mr. Mungai, we could be confused at the end of the day. But because Wakili puts it this way, that the devil in the room is actually the counties. And now the central government is now the savior. But so Wakili argues that we should now go back to where we came from, centralization of resources. Talking of KRA collecting everything, yeah. So, but my worry is, yeah, along all these debates and with all that confusion, at the end of the day, we end up solving nothing. So that's why I was saying this, that the solution is one. Let's have more money in the country, because Mr. Mungai, a financial expert, maybe can shed more light on this. That according to in the Public Finance Act, when the county governments receive 10 billion thereabout every year for development or whatever operations they do with it, the national government is also supposed to chip in with 70 billion for development, yeah? But do we see that happening? So the question is, where does this 70 billion for every county go to? Where does the national government take it? Do they steal it? Perhaps not. Do they repay loans with it? Perhaps yes. So that tells you that we don't have enough money. That's why I was insisting that we should be focusing on getting more money, because the amount that is being stolen, according to me, is a drop in the ocean. So that brings me to this other point about foreign exchange. Whatever we are earning only comes from two regions, whatever we are exporting. So, and that's why I'm asking this question. Why are we not exporting maize like Brazil does, like we import from Brazil? Why are we not exporting sugar from Western region? Why are we not exporting cotton and the products that are gotten from cotton? Why are we only importing mitumba at the expense of our textile industries? And we'll talk about Kikomi collapsed, Mountex collapsed, Rivertex, just a shell. So, and why are we also not exporting rice? If you ask any average Kenyan out here, the brand of rice they know, they'll tell you Pakistan, they tell you Vietnam, and so other nams and nans. So, but we have irrigation schemes in Mwea, in Sagana, in Aero, in Siaya, speaking of the collapsed Dominion farms. Yeah, so that's the question that I've been asking myself, and it is because of there was a deliberate disenfranchisement of the other industries from other regions who were deemed not to be on the right side of politics by the founding fathers, the Kenyatas and the Mois, and they were not as educated as Wakili is. So on that point, I may agree with Wakili that we actually need educated people as leaders. So, and why are we also not tapping in the products, the produces to be found in Ukambani, like fruits? Why are we not? So we are talking about, we all agree that the best way to earn money is through exports. But why are we depending on tea, coffee, miraa, avocado and flowers when we can actually export more than 50 or maybe 20 products from this is a blessed country?
Now, the reason as to why I asked you, you've talked about, you coming from Siaya County. And for the records, according to, the medium-term fiscal strategy paper of 2022-2023, the on-source revenue for Siaya County was estimated to be 500 million shillings, which, according to the money they collected, it did not hit that target. Governor James Orengo, at the moment, has set a target of 1 billion. And he says the Commission on Revenue Allocation believes the county can collect from on-source revenue, can collect up to 2 billion shillings. Meaning the county has the ability to collect more money. And that has been the case, even under the regime of former Governor Cornel Sanga, I believe. But if they can hit that 1 billion target within a span of 1 year, that means probably more money has been collected before, but it ends up in people's pockets. Okay. That to me is the elephant in the room, because you keep on talking about generating more money, and I keep on asking you the question: how can we ensure that we are accountable for the money that we have before we talk about generating more money?
Okay, going by the figures that we've just quoted, on-source revenue for Siaya County being 500 million, that means that in 1 year, if we were to repair the State House dais, we'll actually not be able to do that. The county of Siaya will not be able to afford to do that because the budget was 700 million, right? But setting targets is one thing, and collecting the money is one thing. Now, did you say 2 billion? They set a target of 2 billion, but from where? From who? From where? From who? Because, put it this way, look at it this way. Yeah?
Okay.
We're talking about Siaya County here. And it worries me a lot because in my line of business, I've had the privilege to visit other counties. And when I went to Embu at one time, and I was to meet my client, and they asked me, where are you at? And I told them, I'm at Equity Bank in town. And the next question they asked me was, which Equity Bank are you talking about? Which Equity Bank? You see, as for me, because I come from Siaya, I knew, Nimefika Embu County, this is Equity Bank. Everybody knows that Indo Equity Bank. So, because in Siaya County, when you tell somebody, I'm at Equity Bank, everybody in that county knows where you are. But apparently in Embu town, there are so many Equity Bank branches. Yeah, because there is cash flow. So this money that the governor is talking about, is he going to milk those Kenyans sincere? Because there's no cash flow, there's no exchange of cash there, there's no money at all. The county is dry.
Fair enough. Because of time, gentlemen, let's talk about the transfer of devolved function to county governments, because there has been a delay. There are functions that have not been fully transferred. And for example, agriculture, which holds around 41 functions, could cost is worth around 105 billion. And just to be brief, the functions performed by various ministries and departments in government that are yet to be transferred are worth at least 272 billion. Starting with you, Mr. Mungai, because the president during the devolution conference in Uasin Gishu County, his own county, last year in August, promised that within 2 months, all functions that are yet to be fully transferred will be fully transferred. Now, fast forward, we are in March 2024. Now, this PS for devolution, one Miss Teresia Mbaika, you'd want to accuse her of doublespeak, because in January she said the issue of transferring devolved these functions fully, governors could wait up to 2025. But yesterday she says by the end of March everything will be ready. But the big question is, and the question I want to pose to you is that, do you read malice in the delay of this transferring of devolved functions?
First, I want to run away or disabuse the notion that my colleague has raised, that because money is being lost in the counties, what you need to do is throw more good money after bad money, so that even if they steal, there is more left to work. For the simple reason, it's like telling me, because the thief has come into my house and stolen a small TV, I should then go ahead and buy a bigger TV for them to again come and steal. So what if they steal that one? Do I need 2 more TVs? There is no cure for greed. A person who will steal 10 shillings will steal 100 if they have an opportunity. A person who will steal 100 will steal 1,000 should they get the opportunity. And therefore, I think we need to strengthen our institutions so that we deal with those that are dipping their hand in the till, even as we seek to expand our revenue base. Now, having said that, the issue of devolving functions has been a contentious issue, not because it's not expressly stated and dictated by the Constitution, but mostly because function is followed by money. That is where the contention has been. And because the national government wants to retain as much as possible of the national cake, then in that case because remember, if you fully devolve a function, you're typically saying, we have given you everything. But look at it this way. One of the most contentious functions that has been devolved is health. Are we better off after 2010, 24 years down the line in terms of our health systems than we were? The governors argue, if you had given us the money, we would have been far much better off. But the national government says, so far what we have given you, we have not seen value. I'll give you for example. Yesterday someone was at RUTO hospital. They had gone to take a child there at 9 o'clock in the morning. They left there at 10 p.m. in the evening because there was only one doctor, and by the time they were leaving, there was no medicine. Now that is the state of health, which is a devolved function. I say this and I submit that in my own case, I believe it's good to follow the law to the letter in terms of devolving the functions. But at the same time, we must be very careful, especially when we have a system where people are likely to dip their hand in the till in devolving some of these functions. Because remember, money, as Wakil was rightly saying, goes to the consolidated fund. Now, in that consolidated fund, we have money that needs to pay debt. Money needs to go to various uses. And therefore, progressively, I believe that the national government should, delink themselves from some functions, but they should still maintain oversight for the sake of cohesion. So I believe, yes, there is more that can be done in terms of, devolving the functions. There are functions that have been devolved and yet counties are grappling with them. Noise pollution is a function of the county. They should matters to do with the environment. Agriculture, by the way, is a devolved function. People in Kiambu, they don't have to rely on the national government. That's why the county governments keep on collecting cess. So there are things within counties that counties themselves can develop. Issue of industrial parks, those are issues to do with counties, nothing to do with the national government. The national government just needs to come in with a legal framework. So I believe, yes, there are functions that should be devolved fully to county governments, but I think there are those that county governments, their hands needs to be held by the national government, even as we seek towards fully devolving them.
Wakili, from where you sit, because let's even talk about the current issue, the issue of health, because doctors have threatened to paralyze operations across the country if at all their concerns will not be heard. Now, health is a function that 90%, as you'd want to say at least 90% has been devolved. But KMPDU, for example, do accuse the government of still withholding billions of money set for the health sector. That is why they are on the neck of the health CS. So, from where you sit, can county governments be able to handle all these functions that they still want to be devolved? Because apart from health, there is also energy, there is also housing, just some of the functions that county governments want them to be fully transferred to them.
Number one, I was doing the maths for Siaya County. So they said they collected 500 million. I tried to divide that by 12 months. So the whole of Siaya County from the top to the bottom, the way we know it, has been collecting 41 million shillings a day. No, per month, sorry. So then I divided per day. And I realized that these people are only collecting 1.3 million shillings a day. Now, is that even believable? That Siaya, by the way, it has a population of 1 million people as at the 2019 census, 993,000. So now maybe they could be 1.2, 1.3 million people. That from them, the county government is telling us that they want us to believe they've been collecting only 1.3 million shillings a day. Which means every hour they are collecting 115,000 shillings. The whole county, na hizo gari za county zinazunguka huko and the businesses and everything is a lie. Counties collect a lot more money than they receive from national governments. And we need to get to the point where we get to the root of this. So coming to health, I think there should be a law at the national level saying that any elected official can only be treated in a public hospital. Do you know if we made a law that the president cannot be treated in a private hospital? Akikuwa mgonjwa ataenda Kenyatta, haezi enda Nairobi. All MPs cannot go to these private hospitals. They can only go to national hospitals. MCAs, once they become sick, they can only go to the hospital first as a certain point, not a private hospital, but the public hospital in their area. I am telling you, tomorrow morning, all those hospitals will be painted. They will have doctors, they will have medicine, they will have proper parkings, they'll have emergency wings, and they'll have ambulances. If we came up with a second law saying that no child of any elected public official will go to a private school, I am telling you, there will be no congestion in our public schools. They will all be painted. They will have everything. In fact, even the toilets will look like their toilets in a school abroad. The problem we have is that the people who make laws for this country are thoroughly cushioned from the effects of what is happening on the ground. This person has a mileage allowance. They have a comprehensive medical cover. They don't go to public hospitals. They don't go to public schools. The only public thing they use is public roads. So that person will never find it necessary to have a conversation about Thika Level 4 hospital or Machakos Level whatever hospital. They will never find it necessary. But I wish there was a way, and I pray that there comes a time when we make that law, that no public official is allowed to go to hospital in a private hospital. I am telling you, you will see ambulances. you will see flights coming. It will look like an emergency situation. Them trying to fix those hospitals because they know the next time they fall sick and their children, they'll go to those hospitals. And then we say the medical cover that is given to all our public officials, because you see, like now an MP has got a medical cover that gives them a cover to the tune of 10 million if they are sick. But that 10 million allows them to go to which one? The cream de la cream private hospitals in this country. So we need to change that insurance cover to say it can only cover them in public hospitals. Think about it. When you pay NHIF, which is now changing its name, and you go to those creme de la creme hospitals, what happens? Do they accept to pay? They tell you wewe maskini NHIF yako ni ya kukupeleka hospitali ya public ama ya nurses ama hii ingine inaitwa ya what they call them church based mission hospitals, exactly. You who is so poor and you who is paying money for these elected people, you only qualify to go to Kenyatta National Hospital, sijui Thika Level 4, sijui all those hospitals that have got no facilities, and if you are lucky, you qualify to go to a mission hospital. But the person you are paying for, called a member of parliament, his medical cover is for 10 million and he's qualified to go to the best of the private hospitals. We need to change that law so that if we are going to pay from public money, it has to be to public hospitals. I'm telling you, Kenyatta National Hospital will have the best surgical theaters in the world. I am telling you, those people will change our public hospitals because that is where they go now. The problem we have right now, they don't go there. And that's why when you talk even about fuel, do you think MPs care? They get a fuel allowance. Every time the fuel goes up, they go to parliament. They say my V8 consumes this much. The minute we criminalize fuel allowance and say that from now on, no elected member of public will have fuel allowance, we have refused. Utaona petrol ikishuka mpaka 120. If they have to pay from there, they will go to parliament and say that the fuel is so much and they will remove the taxes. Because 53% of the cost of fuel is taxation. So the thing is, the people who you are depending on to make a law that helps us do not live in that world. They live in another one. It doesn't affect them.
So, should this function, the health function, be fully devolved?
It's not about devolution, because even if you devolve it, the governor does not go to that hospital. The MCAs don't go to those hospitals. They only come when they hear a baby died or a woman gave birth on a corridor. No, I want you to understand why this thing is not happening. Have you ever been given the responsibility of rearing chicken in your house and you've never gone into that chicken house? You only hear unasema, mama akona chicken pale. You don't know how many they are. You don't know the conditions under which those chicken feed. You don't know which water they are given. You don't know whether they are immunized or not. You've never even been to that room to know whether it is hot or cold. The only time you ever come into that chicken house, if you hear there's a disaster, some chicken have died and it is smelling and they tell you are the man of the house, come and remove the chicken. That is the situation we have. We have leaders who are not in touch with health at all. You can tell an MCA, have you ever been to your local zahanati, that dispensary? Have you ever visited it just to see how people queue? He's never been there. So devolving it or not devolving it will not help. How many governors have visited the hospitals that are in their counties? They don't visit, they don't go. And their children don't go to them. And their nephews and their cousins don't go. It's something that is distant from their brain.
Now, who is to blame? Because as it stands, KMPDU says, for example, 1,210 interns are yet to be posted. Now, the rule is they should be posted 30 days after they graduate. Now, because there's a tussle between 90% is devolved. The rest of the function is with the national government. So who do we hold accountable for that mess?
As I told you, why are these people not devolved? Why have they not been posted? It is because the posting authority has no idea why they should be posted. And they don't, the minute, I think we should make it a law that if you're a governor, once a week you should make ward rounds in your, go to Thika Level 4 today, you see people sharing beds. 2 sick people sharing a bed, sometimes 3. Even in turns, we are naketi chini kidogo. I have been there. So, unless these leaders begin to start visiting those facilities, they will not understand why. And also sometimes you say that those nurses are rude. Somebody has done a 16-hour shift. What do you expect? The mind is tired. And the persons who are supposed to relieve them are the ones that are not being posted to those hospitals. The problem we have is not whether it's devolved or not, if that's the answer you're looking for. Problem we have is that the people who are in charge of that responsibility don't do it. Half the time, where are they? Benchmarking, hotels, Naivasha, travel, tour, accommodation. If they are not, even when they come to the county, they come because there is allowances to be given. They are not in touch with what they're supposed to be in touch with.
Now, gentlemen, I also picked on housing because apart from health, there's housing, there's agriculture, there's energy as one of the functions that governors want it to be fully transferred to county governments. But the affordable housing program is being undertaken by the county government, and according to the NLC chairperson, Mr. Gershom Otachi, it says there could be a looming row because national government has acquired county-owned land. Governors argue this is a devolved function. Now, according to Mr. Otachi, again, NLC was never involved in drafting of the bill, yet land is a crucial aspect in this project. Now, Mr. Mungai, starting with you, on the issue of housing, what are we staring at? Because if at all it should be a devolved function, the national government is undertaking that particular mandate of building affordable housing projects, and it's acquiring county-owned land. And even the lands body was not even involved in drafting of this bill to at least figure out the dynamics surrounding the entire saga of a county-owned land and whether this function should be we should involve county governments in it being a devolved function. What are we staring at?
So the affordable housing bill, which has gone to the Senate for concurrence, tends to iron out some of the issues that you have raised. Because initially, housing being a devolved function, what the government was trying to do was anchored in the Finance Act. And part of the housing section was declared unconstitutional by the High Court. So with part of the recommendation that it lacked the correct legal framework. And that is what the National Assembly has been seeking to do. And what the new bill now establishes is how the issue of institutions such as National Land Commission, such as National Housing Corporation, Ministry of Housing. There is also stakeholders such as county governments, and the institutions also that own land, not just county governments, the institutions such as the police force, or rather police service, we have the army. So there are several institutions that own land and that are expected to either benefit or cede part of their land towards the affordable housing program. Now, initially there was no legal framework of how the institutions act, and most importantly, in terms of when we collect money to the consolidated fund or the money that is collected towards affordable housing, how is that money divided amongst the institution? So that law seeks to address the same. But I would say by and large, for the counties that want to undertake housing programs, I think this is the right time. Part I think of the challenge that bedevils us is prioritization. So a county government, if they were left to do housing, I do not think most county governments now are interested in housing. Why? Because they have more pressing needs, such as healthcare. Healthcare is a bit of a pressing need when it comes to counties. Second is wage bill. They have a lot of wages that they need to pay. Some of them that they have brought upon themselves, some that they have inherited, and some that they continue to accumulate as they go by. And therefore, if you are to leave housing primarily to county governments or to even government institutions which do not have a mandate to conduct housing, then it will sort of fall by the wayside. So I believe the bill is meant to address the same, but housing is a devolved function. As to whether counties then will take up the mandate and do that which they are supposed to do remains to be seen. But there is need for adequate housing and affordable housing.
Well, Mr. Renge, just coming back to you on the issue of housing, because in as much as county governments want to undertake this mandate, and Mr. Mungez alluded to the affordable housing bill, which was fronted by Leader of Majority in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, and was passed by the National Assembly. Now, the opposition has been vocal about this particular issue. Now, in addition to the voice of the opposition, some county governments want to undertake this particular function. But other counties have fully, embraced the function being done by national governments. And we had even Homa Bay Governor Gladys Wanga talking about, how the project is a success in our own county during the Homa Bay Investment Forum, which was attended by President William Ruto. From where you sit, should this particular function, be left to, be done as it has been started by the national government, or should county governments and the national government come together? Because at the end of the day, like Mr. Mungai says, the big issue is sort of the issue of, ensuring that we have enough housing in the country. Or, should they come together, or should it be fully devolved?
Well, before we even get to the question whether they should be working together on that housing, first we're calling it affordable housing, but I prefer calling it unaffordable housing, because as one Mama Mboga asked, that they live in mabati structures, and where it, even when it rains, it pours in the houses, and oftentimes they come out of the house for failing, for defaulting on the rent. So you can imagine a mabati house, how much is the rent anyway? I don't think it goes beyond the 2,000 shillings. So and this Mama Mboga was asking, so if we are being chased out of a mabati structure, how unaffordable is this housing that the government is talking about? Because we saw that they are asking for a first installment of about from 300,000. I don't know whether it was a one bedroom or a studio. But all in all, Gladys Wanga praising the housing and how the housing project and how it has been a success. I'm really a little skeptical about it, because how is it a success? How many people have acquired it? Is it a success because it has been brought up, or is it a success because we have people who have acquired the houses and they are comfortably paying, you see, the Mama Mboga?
From what she was talking about, you see, according to President William Ruto, the project is not just an issue of, sorting, ensuring that Kenyans have proper housing, but also in terms of ensuring that local people, the youth get employment. So in Governor Wanga's view, the local guys working in the Juakali sector have, secured jobs into this particular project. So that is, what she's terming as success, and of course embracing the project as well.
Let me take you to North Korea. We have highways, but they are ghost highways, because no one has a car in that country. You see? So putting up those structures does not make it a success. Well, because we have so many buildings in this city or in this country which are not occupied, because it's not, it doesn't make sense to occupy them. So I don't think it's a success. But we do. I agree that we do need houses. People do need decent houses. That's one way of actually eradicating poverty. But it should not be the work of the government. Even birds. Somebody said that even birds build their own nests. Why should the government build houses for us? Well, why can't it just put money in our pockets? Then we shall build those houses for ourselves. As a matter of fact, the number of houses that we have in this country is the number is huge. The number is huge, but how many of those houses were actually constructed by the government vis-a-vis the private sector?
Well, you want to add something on that before?
Only two things. Number one, we don't have a housing problem in this country. We have an urbanization problem, and I have said it before. The reason people come, we are trying to build houses in Nairobi is because, and many other urban centers, is because people came looking for opportunities here. I wish we were spending money building local industries. I wish we were spending money trying to move the industries from where they are concentrated in Nairobi to the local areas, because the people will follow their jobs, and naturally the population of Nairobi is going to reduce. That's my first submission. The second submission is, why make the cost of cement expensive and then build houses for us? naturally, a man is built with a desire to house his family. A man is created, and everything he says, when I grow up, I will build a house. My house will... In fact, when you give him toys, they start building houses. Our beautiful ladies, most of the time, their dolls were babies. They kept because they have maternal instincts. We have instincts as men to build houses for our families. Make construction material affordable. We shall build our own houses. All the houses in this country were not built by this KK administration. We built our own houses. Men and women go and depend. Utajenga hata ya matope. The Masai will build their manyata. People will build whatever they can build. If you make mabati affordable, if you make timber affordable, if you make nails and cement, and just by reducing the taxes on construction material, I am telling you, men will do everything they have to do to build homes. And it's the pride of every man. Simuliona kuna moja ilikuwa inajengewa mtu mwenda zake, and they were trying to build it very quickly to make sure there's a home for him, because it is African that a man wants to have a home at home. I mean, even him who comes for Nyanza will tell you that you need to have at least a Simba for them to come and lay you to rest there. So our people are willing to build houses for themselves. But don't make it expensive and then start building for us. What is wrong with your head? We never asked you for houses. Just make construction material affordable. We shall build our own houses. And every man out there, anasave hapa, anaendesha bodaboda, anatuma mabati mbili nyumbani, anatuma misumari, anatuma. After some time, the local carpenter will have fixed him something that looks like a house. But it's his house, it's good. And a pit latrine outside there. And then a bathroom where you put the gunia on the front. For now, that's a starting point. But don't force everybody that you have to build for me and stay up there in the air and I have to use a lift to my house. I never dreamt of living like a bird in the air in a nest, no. So this affordable housing thing is not working for us. First, let's build industries in the local areas. And I can tell you many people will follow their jobs. In fact, some of these companies, if you ask them, they'll tell you, we don't like operating from Nairobi. Look at the people who are making oil, edible oil. The bulk of their raw material comes from Uganda, the sunflower and so on and so forth. I think they'll probably even be happy making edible oils from somewhere in Western. So if they had moved there and 2,000 people followed them there, we'll keep decongesting the cities. Then we won't see the need to build houses here.
Okay, finally, I want to get, as you wrap up this conversation, I want to get your sentiments on this, because even as you oppose the housing affordable housing project, LSK has threatened to sue KRA in regards to the reductions made into the contribution to the housing levy. Starting with you, Mr. Mungai. In the bill that is currently before the Senate, one of the amendments made was that to ensure not only salaried Kenyans but also non-salaried Kenyans contribute 1.5% of their income to this particular project, because the court late last year said it is unfair for those non-salaried Kenyans to benefit at the end, having not contributed in any way. But the big question is rather, how do you determine, how will the government determine that that Jokali person has made this amount of money from his business to be able to deduct the 1.5%?
Taxation is premised on most of it is premised on self-declaration. The state believes that what you've declared is correct until proven otherwise. So what you say you've earned is what the state deems you to have earned, unless contrary investigations show that what you declared was not correct as per the declaration. On the issue of LSK threatening to go to court, I think LSK as an institution will only have teeth when Fanyamambo becomes the chairman. I don't know whether he has dreams and ambitions to become the chairman.
I'll answer you.
But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a moribund institution. They should stop threatening and go ahead and sue. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see why they have to threaten, to call a press briefing, to threaten to sue. They have all the legal instruments and they have the legal capacity to sue. I think they should go ahead and do so. Particularly important is to say that the Attorney General has already advised the Kenya Revenue Authority that the deductions as of now have no anchorage on law, and therefore KRA should cease deductions. I believe KRA, being a body that respects the rule of law, you just don't cut the tap all at once. I believe they're in the process of implementing that court order. But as to LSK threatening to sue, I think they don't need to waste our time by calling, you know, precious journalists who have a precious time. You know, journalists sell airtime. So when you take up airtime to tell us you're threatening, I think it defeats the purpose. Journalists should be covering you while making your submissions before a competent judge that you're actually suing, not threatening to sue.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Denge, you know, in your final submissions, from where you sit, is it just, first of all? Because many people argue that you cannot, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, take 1.5% from someone who's not salaried to, you know, say you want to take that money and, you know, put it into the affordable housing program. Like Mr. Mungai says, it depends on what you've declared as your income. But there's someone out there who's non-salaried, doesn't have any, you know, depends, lives hand to mouth. Now, is it just on that person for the government to, you know, come and say, we want 1.5%?
Yeah, it should be just if the money will be used appropriately. It should be just. Actually, I agree. I'll not oppose everything that the government is coming up with, because as a matter of fact, I believe that I am the government, me and you. So everyone should actually pay taxes, and that's one very, very good way of broadening the tax base. Yeah.
Are you saying the 1.5% is Solomonic?
it will be actually it is Solomonic, but at the wrong time. Yeah.
It cannot be both. It can only be one.
It is Solomonic, but in the wrong economy, because people are suffering. There's no money. There are no jobs actually. So actually, you can propose that people pay the 1.5%. But what if I'm earning nothing? What if I'm earning maybe 2,000 shillings a month? How much will we even get from that? And how much development can you do with that amount? So it will only be Solomonic when we put the money in the pockets of the people, rather than taking money away from the people.
Okay.
Very simple. First and foremost, congratulations to Faith Odhiambo. Faith Odhiambo was my classmate at Catholic University. And I remember then when we were doing law, there people were saying, oh, you cannot match up to University of Nairobi and any other person. It has come to prove that even some of us who had the opportunity to have gone to University of Nairobi anyway and chose other universities have gotten there. So congratulations to President-elect Faith Odhiambo, and we have faith in her leadership, and I believe things will go well. LSK did not call a press conference to threaten people about going to court. They called a press conference and said, we need adequate evidence. So we are calling on any Kenyan whose payslip has got evidence of deductions to bring their payslip, so that we add to our threshold of evidence, so that as we move to court, we have adequate documentation for that. As to whether I'll ever become chairman of LSK, that's an interesting question. I've always told people, not everybody who studied law ended up becoming an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. There are people who think that if you've done medicine, you must go to the theater and you must operate. There are doctors who are happy to fix your dentist, your teeth, and the nose is very near and they don't touch noses. If you tell them you have an eye problem, they send you to an optician. I do a very interesting branch of law. I do mediation, I do arbitration. I run a firm in Kilimani called Kilimani Mediation Center. And all we do is to help people resolve their disputes out of court. We can't all be advocates who take disputes to court. So yes, I do not practice that kind of law. I do not go to court. I am not a member of that Law Society of Kenya. I'm a lawyer who has chosen to practice law differently. And people are happy because they come for my services. You know, the day you will go to court for 5 years, you hear pre-trial, you hear mention, my lords, much obliged. After 5 years of going to court, you almost feel like you're a lawyer. Yet you've never gotten justice. So they come to my office, and within 1 hour, half an hour, a dispute that had taken 5 years in court, we resolve it out of court, we file, and we submit, and it is done. So yes, Law Society is doing a good job, I must say, and we must congratulate them for what they are doing, and say they are not threatening to sue, they will sue. They are just asking Kenyans who have got what would help them as part of evidence to come out. And if I had a pay slip, I would have been one of the first persons to go and submit my pay slip. But by God's design, he chose that I don't have a pay slip. So yeah, that's where we are.
Well, thank you very much. For the record, LSK says they will sue KRA for contempt of court over the deductions on the housing levy. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this particular morning to talk about the issue of devolved functions and disbursement of funds, and of course, as well, the issue of housing. That is all that we had for you this particular morning. Mr. Mungai, thank you very much. Mr. Denge, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Of course, Wakili Fanyamambo Kinuthia, like you said, it's God's will that you are not, you don't have a payslip, but it's him who has plans for all of us. And probably, like Mr. Mungai says, probably one day we'll see you at the helm of the Law Society of Kenya. That is all that we had for you today. Do stay tuned. Of course, we'll be bringing you details and stories making headlines across the country in our bulletins at 1, 7 and 9 p.m. And of course, you can visit our website www.lookuptv.co.ke just to get an overview of the stories making headlines not only here in the country but as well across the borders. Until then, you can have yourself a wonderful day, and like always, God bless.